Well, hello, everybody. This is a brief message before our long episode on synchronicities. And just to explain that we discuss synchronicities within our Building Forth community that we offer to the world through this podcast. And we discuss synchronicities. It's really 2 weeks or two sessions together that I've combined. The first part will be our community member Michael, and he will speak about some of the amazing synchronicities that have happened in his life and then our reaction to that. And then the second half is more of a discussion, more widely and broadly discussed within our group, where people share different synchronicities that have happened in their lives. And we also talk about the metaphysics of such things, as well as basically positioning synchronicities in our lives as not so much guides towards something as if we're following breadcrumbs, but more of affirmations of our own will and faith that move forward somewhere, that we have chosen a certain orientation and are walking through that, walking towards that. And then synchronicities emerge in our life to affirm those things. Anyways, make up your own mind. Of course, you're always welcome to do that. And then secondly, if you've had synchronicities in your life, things that you can't explain, feel well met here in this particular episode. And know that you are a valuable and wonderful expression of the one infinite creator that is experiencing itself as you. Thank you. Troy, do you want to open us up and I can close us down?
Sure.
Before we get started, I just want to welcome everybody. People will be trickling in, and tonight we're going to enjoy connecting with our brother Michael, who will be sharing the theme of synchronicity, particularly in his experience. So we're all very excited because he's got some great ones. Thank you. Take it away, Mr. T.
Okay. Take a few breaths in. Perhaps you have a mantra that you use or a prayer phrase. Link that prayer phrase with your breath. Let it help you sink into the center of your soul, moving from your head to your heart. And remember how faithful that love in your heart has been to you these last years, and maybe even throughout your life, but particularly these last years to bring you to build forth. What strange synchronicities Spirit has led you to be able to find such a place as this. And let your heart give thanks. And feel the energy of all of those around in our group. And think of the individuals and give thanks again. And then think of our presenter and give thanks. Think of the different people who've loved you to bring you to this place. And give thanks. And now come, Holy Spirit, fill our hearts and enkindle within us the fire of your love. Amen.
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 Well, thanks, Troy, and hi, everyone. It's great to see you. I was asked to share a couple of synchronicities with you tonight because 2 weeks ago I had asked the question when we were talking about Ra and the law of one. What does Ra say about synchronicities? So I was invited to share a couple of them, and I want to acknowledge that everybody has synchronicities in their lives. When I look back on my entire life, it is a string and a series of synchronicities, which I haven't really recognized until recently, because so many have come my way, especially in the last 2 years, and they've come with more complexity and deep meaning, as well as some questions. So, at the very highest level, I would say 30,000, 50,000 feet, my understanding of synchronicities is that they happen because the entire universe is conscious. And, we are part of this consciousness, and that we are souls having a human experience, and that in essence we're holographic fractals of source, of love, of God. And so there's from there just a great amount of complexity about how the universe works, and at that point I don't begin to even understand it. But I'm always curious about what we can understand about it. And for me, just in the last week, because one of these happened just 2 weeks ago, I've started to go back through my entire life and make a list of the synchronicities that I can think of. And the first one started for me at 18 months of age. I don't remember it, but it was a synchronicity of that really was a huge influence in my life, that without having had it, I would have been a much different person than I am today, and for which I'm very, very grateful. And it also, my major synchronies, other major ones have been in my careers. I've had 3 careers. And since I was 15 years old and had my first job, I've never, ever filled out an application for a job. It's always been through networking and people I know, and being absolutely in the right place at the right time. And I was able to change careers this way, even though out of college, I had absolutely no idea where I was going. I was a psychology major, and passed on going to graduate school even after I was accepted, and had no idea what I was going to do, and just followed my passions. And with each following of my passions, I found really great opportunities and had a varied career. So this first synchronicity is one that happened exactly a year ago today, but it had a 2-day lead up to it. So August 27th of last year was a Sunday because we had a leap year. So we're 2 days ahead this year. And some context is that I follow, as some of you know, I follow the teachings of Suzanne Giesemann, who's a medium and spiritual teacher, has quite a story of her life, and an absolutely wonderful teacher. And she has a app called The Awakened Way, which you can get for free. Download it to your phone. And each morning, if you choose, you get a message that comes up on your phone. These messages come from her daily morning meditation and her channeling from her higher source, her team, which she calls Sanaya. And this is available 365 days a year. There's always a message from Sanaya. So park that aside. And I was listening to an interview by Alex Ferrari on Next Level Soul. And he always has really interesting guests. And this particular Thursday, before the Sunday, I watched an interview with Dee Wallace, the actress. And Dee Wallace, I had not ever heard of her, but was reminded that in the movie E.T., she played the mother. She played Mary. And I saw that movie in 1983 in San Francisco. I remember where I was. I went to a matinee by myself. I remember the theater, the street. I remember very distinctly, but I didn't remember a scene that she had talked about in which she felt guided by source, by spirit. And she continues to be a spiritual teacher and has her own podcast and such. So I was so impressed with the love and the story of her career and how she has used it to guide her life that I watched the podcast again the next day, which I rarely do, to take notes. So I took several notes through that. And I became very curious about the scene that she talked about that I didn't remember in the movie, in which it's at within the first 45 minutes or so, she's got 3 children. There's no father in the family. He has left them for a girlfriend, and they're at the kitchen table, and Mary, their mother, is somewhere in the kitchen, and the kids are talking about the last time they talked with Dad. Mary had obviously not been in on that conversation, and one of the other kids says, Dad's in Mexico with so-and-so, Lynn, whatever, his girlfriend. And she turns around with this very deep sadness and emotion and tears, and she says, and he doesn't even like Mexico. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to see this. And so the following night, now on Saturday night, making my dinner at home, and I went on Amazon Prime and I rented the movie E.T. to watch this scene. And then I just kicked back and enjoyed the movie and kind of the low tech, considering what they do today, that this was 1981, 82 Spielberg, and, with what they do with filming today. I just enjoyed it. And I really, really, really enjoyed the message. What a beautiful message. And if you may recall, Mary's oldest child became friends with E.T. and they devised, using toys, basic toys, a telephone for E.T. to call home to his family in space. And so, the message then became, phone home. Well, he may or may not have made contact. I think he did. I'm pretty sure, but I don't remember that part. But E.T. is captured by the scientists, and it looks like he's dead, and it looks like they're going to take and experiment with his body and whatnot. So the little boy is able to talk his way in and say goodbye to E.T. that he'll never see him again. So he walks into the room, and E.T. is on a stretcher. He's lifeless. There's absolutely no life. And he's telling E.T. how much he loves him, and all of a sudden, E.T.'s heart and chest begins to glow, if you remember. And as it glows, E.T. kind of comes back to life. Then they escape, and they get on the kid's bicycle, and that famous scene of them riding the bike to the spaceship and then saying goodbye at the spaceship, and the boy deciding whether he was going to stay on Earth or go with E.T. and his family, which he really wanted to do. So the next morning on Sunday, my phone is by my bed, and I pick it up when I wake up. And what pops up is the message from the Awakened Way, which is this. well, it knocked my socks off. I wasn't wearing any, but I had been wearing socks. I mean, it was jaw dropping for me. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay to stop sharing?
Michael,
What?
just for people who might, in our group, might want to listen to this again,
Yeah.
or listen to this, would you mind reading that out loud? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, happy to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Phone home. You may recall this line from a movie when one who is in this world but not of it expressed the desire to reconnect with home base with a capital H. And how did he do so? He turned up his heart light. You are not so different from that movie character. You are in this movie but not of it. You have a true home that is always available to you, but a shift in focus is necessary to fully experience your deeper nature. How often do you simply set aside a few moments to reconnect through the heart? Turn up that light, dear one, in moments set aside for that very purpose. Trust that you have companions connecting with you through the heart space who are eager to let you know you are so very loved. So it's just really cool that it's also a year ago today. And this has been something that stayed with me for the entire year. I think about it a lot. I think about it in my meditations, on my walks. I think about it when I'm in public places. And what have I learned in a year? For me, what I've learned in a year is that I can't just turn up the light like it is a dial on a radio. It's meant, for me, it has been a combination of intention, awareness, and really tuning in and raising my vibration and frequency while choosing not to engage in lower vibrations and frequency. And that by doing this on a consistent level, I'm able to actually have that light turn up automatically. It's become part of who I am rather than something that I have to work on that's outside of me. Anyway, any comments or?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was lovely on so many levels. And the most important thing for me is that how you have incarnated that, and it's become your stage, not just a state. When you read that, it went right there to the heart, and then you see it as part of who you are now, not having to have effort. That's great. That's metanoia. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Really cool.
Victor?
I would just say that it's very encouraging, your message. So it was nice to hear, because I don't feel like I've gotten to that place where it's automatic and happening consistently. But yeah, it's very encouraging. Thank you.
Well, I noticed it even more. I really noticed it a couple of Sundays ago, and it's connected actually to my next one. So again, going back to Suzanne Giesman, I went to her workshop 2 weekends ago. It was a 2-day workshop for mediums who don't want to be professional mediums. And so it was, I'd say about 200 to 250 very joyful people. Talk about being in a room with high vibration and frequency. And there were a lot of people there that were there because they have lost somebody. Some of them have lost their children. And on Sunday, when I was coming back from Spokane, I was in the airport and waiting for my flight home. And one thing that you can notice when you're traveling outside of a major city such as Seattle or wherever is that the rates of obesity seem to be much, much higher. And I have to admit that I can go to a place of judgment, especially when I'm not used to seeing it in such mass. And it's discouraging from a health standpoint for our country and the health of all. And sitting in the airport and looking around at people and actually noticing I wasn't going to a place of judgment, but actually had gone automatically to a place of love. But I had just come out of that two-day workshop. So back to the workshop, and while I was there was a lot of excitement about the IONS conference at the end of this month. Does everybody know what IONS is? So it's the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And it attracts the international meeting attracts over 700 people every year. And it goes on for like three to 4 days right before the Labor Day weekend this year. So Suzanne talked about it. And oh, by the way, I told Suzanne, I wrote her after that synchronicity a year ago, as well as I wrote Dee Wallace, and I heard back from both of them. They both answered. But when I was in Spokane, I introduced myself to Suzanne and reminded her of that message a year ago and wanting her to put a face to the story. And she said it gave her goosebumps. Anyway, now there's another synchronicity associated with Suzanne. So the following Friday, I watch a lot of, podcasts and interviews like Jeffrey Mishlove and Alex Ferrari and others on YouTube. And so Friday night, instead of watching Netflix or Prime Video, I was looking at what was coming up in my subscription feed. And I noticed on the right a video that was suggested that I was not a subscriber to the channel, nor was I familiar with the woman who was speaking. But we talk about snags and how spirit can snag us. I was snagged by the title, which said alcoholic dies and meets her ancestors. So I clicked on it, and it's a 30-minute her story, very, very well done, being told about her addiction, her childhood, her party life, and her NDE, which she had at age 22. And it took her another 20 years for spirit to get through to her and say, you know what? I'm not going to keep helping you if you don't do something about your addiction. So anyway, she's 64 years old now. And she said in the video that she grew up in Seattle. And at the very beginning, there's a shot of the Space Needle. And I think she said her father was an attorney. So I wonder if she still lives in Seattle. So I did a search for her, and I couldn't tell if she still lived here, but I found her business. And what she does now is that she is a writing coach and consultant. And there was a 206 phone number, so I'm kind of guessing she lives in Seattle. So I then also, through her talk, got interested again at IONS. And I thought, should I go to this, in a couple of weeks in Arizona? So I Googled IONS, and the first thing that came up was the Seattle chapter of IONS, which was the first chapter established outside of the National Association. And it was started by a woman named Kimberly, who founded it in 1982, and she still runs it here. And so there was a blurb that said tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. at Good Shepherd Center, they would have a speaker at their monthly meeting, which is the first Saturday of every month. They have one meeting a month. And the story of this young woman's NDE seemed pretty powerful. And I thought, I've got nothing to do. Why don't I go? Well, Saturday morning, I've got a routine of going to the farmer's market, shopping and then coming back. I made lunch, walked Stanley, and I felt like I really wanted a nap. And so I just thought, do I really want to go to this? But I had a really strong nudge to go. And I just rested for 10 minutes and got up and then went. So I go to the IONS meeting, and there's maybe 50 chairs set up in the room, maybe more. I would say that it was only half full, was in a very large crowd. And I chose to sit about 1/4 of the way back on the center aisle seat. So the woman who founded Seattle IONS also greeted me when I came in, and we really just had a very light chit chat. I got a coffee, I sat down. When the meeting started, she welcomed everybody. And then she introduced the speaker, who talked for about 40 minutes. And after about 10 or 15 minutes into the program, somebody comes in from the back of the room to my right, late, and slides into my row of all rows and sits directly next to me in an empty seat. And I looked out of the corner of my eye and I thought, nah, couldn't be. And then I looked down at her left hand, because I couldn't just turn around and stare at her. I looked down at her left hand, and she was wearing a blue ring that I recognized in the video that I had watched the night before. And it was Louisa Peck from the video. So I get really excited and thinking, this is so cool, but wait, that's not everything. So after this young woman shares her NDE, Kimberly comes back up to the front of the room to begin to facilitate Q&A. Now, I've only met Kimberly in saying hello to her coming in. Louisa probably knows her, I don't know. But she stands in the front of the room and she looks at the two of us and points to the two of us and draws an arc over us and says, you two are connected. And so I took out my phone and I showed Louisa. I said, here you are on my YouTube feed from last night. I just watched this. And this was actually, I thought, really funny. But if you read her book and her sense of humor, this is so her. She reached into her bag. She picked her bag off the floor. She reached into it and pulled out this book. She pulled out her book and she said, do you want to buy it? And I thought I was mishearing her, because people are, asking questions and and this is all going on while they're doing that. And I said, what? She said, you want to buy my book? I said, yeah, of course. She says, well, I can make change and whatnot. Well, I had exactly $14 in my pocket from the farmer's market from the night before or the morning before. Anyway, I have been racking my brain as to what the purpose of this is. And I went up to Kim and I said, afterwards, I said, so what did you see and what did you sense? And she said, I just saw energy. I just saw your energies together. And then Kim asked me to share what had just happened to the group after the Q&A was over. So she dedicated the book. I bought the book. She dedicated it. And she said, Michael, glad I popped up, with a smiley face, Louisa. So I thought, well, I'm in recovery. She's in recovery. Maybe there's something here that has to do with recovery. So I got her email and then I wrote her afterwards, and I documented this whole thing because it was so, I thought, complex, and wanted her to see it in writing. And she wrote back and she just said, wow, something really big is opening up for you. And then I said, where do you go to AA meetings? And so I went to her meeting last Friday night, which is way out of where my neighborhood is. It's 7 miles, which in Seattle is a lot. So anyway, that's the latest. I have no idea what it really means, other than it's another demonstration of how fun spirit is and how fun the universe is and works.
And how unalone we are.
How unalone we are, yeah.
Mm.
And she's moving. Oh, by the way, she just bought a house and she's moving to the Oregon coast in a couple of weeks. So think about that timing. This didn't just happen later. could happen a month from now and I'd never meet her.
I sometimes feel that when we start saying our Mary's yes with a wholeheartedness, in other words, not my will, but your will be done, and then just try to be an instrument, that might be, it might create a spiritual gravity, almost like a white hole, black hole, white hole, but some kind of singularity of will and faith that come together, and not only does that draw things into our life, but I feel like we are given to the world in a new way. I mean, it could very well be, I'm just making this up, I don't know about this lady that you sat next to, but what if she was feeling really sad that day? You know, what if she were feeling in some ways isolated, or I don't know, and you were tuned in such a way that complemented her wholeness, your wholeness, and she made a melody or a harmony then, you know? And that resonating sound might have been what the speaker picked up when talked about the energy. But I am assuming, because relationships are this way, relationality is this way, to whatever degree you pulled her into your energy, she also pulled you for her delight. Yeah.
Totally. So what would Ross say about this? What would Jung say about this?
Well, Victor, what do you want to weigh in on what Ra might say? I have some thoughts too, but I'd love to hear from somebody else.
I have no clue.
Okay. Yeah.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
did find something about Jung, and I'd sent it to you, Michael, but Jung believed synchronicities were evidence of a unifying consciousness at play in the universe, creating physical manifestations of what's happening in our psyche.
Okay, so what do you think that means to you, Barbara?
For me, I was trying to think that, and I was thinking that when I talk about, so I might be thinking something may be on my mind and kind of going around, and all of a sudden maybe a person shows up, or a book shows up, or some sort of information, or like it could be a YouTube video, that shows up to me. That's kind of how I felt that, which is different than kind of what happened today, which I'm not, a very simple little thing today. My husband wanted to clean this beautiful wall sconce that we have. It's glass and it comes in pieces. And so he took it down and he was going to wash them. And I was in the kitchen doing something, and he was in there cleaning them in the kitchen. And I said, you might want to just let those pieces air dry. I said, they'll dry quickly. And then I turned on to do something else. Well, he decided not to do that with the main piece. And of course it broke. He broke it. And I thought, okay, that was interesting, because I wasn't even, you know what I mean? It was just things like that will happen, which I think is very different than a synchronicity. When you all of a sudden say something and, oh, okay, I guess that's why. So I don't know if,
I think that we would use the word synchronicity in a non-nuanced way. Maybe is not that helpful, but so we can nuance it. Maybe there's different types of synchronicity, different categories. But I think the bottom line for all of them is the degree to which it helps us live in the immediacy of our present moment with a greater capacity to love, a greater capacity to stand under the circumstances, our circumstances, someone else's, and as Michael would say, to start seeing them from the heart Of course, that's what Ra talks about is love and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
seeing a holistic picture, So if whatever tool that happens, coincidence, synchronicity, whatever it is that allows us to open up and access what Ra says in session 10, I think, the moment contains love being the plenum, the fullness, whatever portal that is to get us into, and then expansive to see that, feel and intuit the whole thing. That's the purpose of these things. And one of the things that Ra talks about specifically is that the higher self, which is us in mid-sixth density, begins to have a dialogue with, and maybe I'm putting some of Doug Scott into Ra here, so this is huge grain of salt, please. But there becomes where the higher self sends the unconscious, your unconscious, this desire to get into the conscious mind, your conscious, so that there can be a streamlined use of catalyst and third density space-time. There's always this call from the higher self. Well, how does the unconscious, your unconscious, get the conscious mind's attention? How is this going to happen? And that's the big question mark that the unconscious has, is how am I going to get conscious mind's attention? One big way would be dreams. Both Ra and Jung would say that. But another way would be where your conscious mind starts to see something that may at first not have much meaning. But then you might see it again, and you start to form a thought form, an energetic nexus, and overlay that experience with meaning. And then your unconscious mind says, aha, maybe the color turquoise with 782 number, which might mean nothing to anybody else, all of a sudden has some kind of meaning, and that becomes almost like a grip on your conscious mind. Then your unconscious mind can use that as code that's special to you, and then help get your attention to the nature of the mystery of union and unity, of the fullness of love, which is always and everywhere here. And we are awakened to that through these synchronicities that maybe didn't have meaning but now do. And then lastly, I'll say that then there's many times, like Michael was talking about now, that you almost are nudged into something. It's almost as if your face is moved this way, and then somebody's pointing right there, and you look, and it just opens up something so clearly clearly waiting for you, that you can't say anything else except awe and wonder. And those moments are geared towards breaking us open, which is also what Ross says of what UFOs are supposed to be for, from the Confederation, is just breaking us open into the awe and wonder. So we're very grateful for those things. And Michael, it sounds like to me, even though you say it's been natural now for a year where your heart opened, let's say your opened heart and see things from this green ray, I would also be willing to bet that you're having to say yes to those invitations, but you do it now so efficiently. This is called using catalyst efficiently, that you're doing it so efficiently that it doesn't have to register to your conscious mind anymore. Right. It's like, have you ever driving, and even if it's an hour and you get out and you realize, holy cow, how did I get here? Your unconscious mind, which can process stuff so quickly, that was actually driving, and your conscious mind was free to do things.
Yeah, and that's the gift here on that first one. And I would add one more to your two, Doug, and that is the guiding hand of spirit. And I alluded to this when I started writing down this past week a list of all what I think are synchronicities in my life in the first one. So, my father was a raging alcoholic, a Jekyll and a Hyde, and he drank himself to his grave at age 55. And there was a lot of chaos and violence, verbal and physical abuse in my family. And I was the middle child. I have an older brother and a younger sister. And when I was 18 months old, my parents bought their first home. And directly next door to them, another couple the same age with no children bought their very first home. And from an early time on, I referred to them as Aunt and Uncle, Uncle Don and Aunt Eunice, and they saved my life. They gave me everything that my parents couldn't give me in terms of love and boundaries and motivation. I remember what they felt and smelled like. I can't tell you that about my parents. And so I had, I was with both my, biological mother and father throughout their entire life, not their entire life, from my beginning of my life till their death. And the same with Aunt Eunice and Uncle Don. We remained very, very close, and I was present also at their death. But that was certainly a gift as a synchronicity that I look back on, that I can't imagine how different I would have been if I had not had that. And what I learned through that is a greater capacity to love. And that's certainly what could have been in my, my spirit, but not certainly in my psyche at the time. But it certainly gave me what I needed in terms of love.
Beautiful. Elizabeth, I bet you have a nice story. I can just see something coming up there. Hold on.
You're muted.
You're muted, so you need to unmute. Ask to unmute. It's not working for some reason.
Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Michael. Am I on now? Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Michael for telling these stories. I love these stories. To me, this is just my response to it. It's like I see the creator, this is in my imagination, going, surprise. And it adds a delight. It adds a delight and a mystery that I think in our very rational world, we can lose. And I heard somebody saying one time, it's like they called it a God wink. Now, that's not necessarily what I would say, but it adds so much joy. I just think it adds joy to a really hard place to live sometimes. And I think I agree with you, Doug, when you say that it adds awe, and all of a sudden the mystery gets bigger. And I just feel like that sense of awe and joy is just a precious gift. And to be able to see it like you did, Michael, it's like, whoa, this is crazy. But it's true. And I don't know about you, but it creates a lightness of spirit within me when those things happen and I recognize them. I just think that's a wonderful gift. And the more you see it, the more joy you have. And I think that, certainly for me, I want to watch for them, honestly. I want to watch because I want to be amazed and I want to be connected to the mystery. Anyway, that's just a response. So
I think it's a very normal response. And what's interesting is when we understand the underlying meaning of these kinds of things, it's to awaken us that the whole darn thing is magical. Every moment is magical, and synchronicities will happen that every day. It's just a course of the day. flying in and out. Every moment is kind of a synchronicity. And all that's required is our desire to see it. Sometimes I pray, I say, Lord, give me the eyes to see the fullness here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much give me signs, but rather give me the eyes to see. And second thing I just want to point out really quick, and then I want to ask you to weigh in on what I just said, if that's okay there, Elizabeth. But I want to make this point because the way synchronicities work is we don't necessarily know how they arrived. In other words, we have to discern the spirits of the synchronicities too. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If I feel like I'm really spiritual, but my particular worldview is, let's say, very warfare spirituality, or constantly looking for the malicious intent behind everything. If I'm very conspiratorial in my mindset and spiritual, then if I see a synchronicity that I can't help but say it's divine, it doesn't mean that it's true. It might mean that I am projecting a particular kind of vibration and then expecting through faith and will that manifest. And then it galvanizes like a spiritual gravity, the astral plane, to manifest something to which I would say that's miraculous. But that doesn't mean that what is manifest or that sign is any higher than the particular energy through which I manifested or desired to see it. So if I go looking for something, I'm going to find signs to validate that confirmation bias. You see?
Could you give an example of
miraculous?
Sometimes maybe somebody you heard had some manifestation like that?
That would be not maybe the highest or greatest good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happens all the time, and I see it all the time with my clients. Here would be an example. Let me see. It's a bit personal. I'm trying to think if I can find another one in my mind. Well, I would say that whenever I was connected to whenever I had friends that were very, very conspiratorial, then they would be talking about, they had this affirmation, and then they believed that there was some kind of major Illuminati reptilian thing going on, and then maybe right then a lizard walks by. And so for them, that would be absolute, complete, total proof that their pathway is revealing this, something like that, or misinterpreting a dream, that was a product of their own bias and worldview, but they're taking it as a sign of their higher self saying, "This is it." And maybe one other, this I have seen personally. I have seen this in my counseling, and that is this. You'll have somebody who begins a spiritual journey, but they make a fallacy, which Ken Wilber calls the pre-trans fallacy, thinking that we're more ascended than we are, more, enlightened than we are. I've seen people who feel like, well, I'm beginning this journey, but my spouse or my partner isn't. Therefore, I am claiming in sovereignty, I deserve to have somebody that matches my spiritual enlightenment state, and then begin to manifest in their own relationship caustic and hostile behavior, all in the name of, without ever saying it, an elitism. And then when they really get going, and there's a lot of meditation and, and there's now caustic energy between the two, then somebody comes into their life that's attractive or something like that. And then the person will completely say, you see, here's the divine person that is means that I should divorce my spouse and marry you.
Okay.
And the whole thing
Thank you.
is not, yeah. Okay, I'll stop there, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, those are good.
Victor.
I wanted to just say that I went through a point where I was following numerology way too seriously, and I was starting to see numerology everywhere and using it as confirmation bias, and I'm on the right path, I'm doing the right thing here, and that got me in trouble for sure. I don't have a specific remembrance of anything getting that bad, but I noticed it as it was happening, and I stopped myself. I actually talked about it at a Law of One meetup at one point, and yeah, it's definitely a part of it. Yeah, so if you go searching for it, it's there. You know.
Yeah, so I think the way we want to deal with these things is just like it is with astrology, and just like it is with the adept cycle that Rod talks about, is synchronicities come in, they come out. The veil might be thin sometimes, maybe thicker other times, but whatever happens, to not get attached to that and not go looking for it, because that can become a new drug. That this world is bereft of the miraculous until I get a miraculous sign, and then it's almost, we need that dopamine hit because we're feeling so alienated, you know? The point of these things is to affirm our path of faith, and sometimes leads us, but most of the time it's facilitate something that's already in your heart. In other words, you're walking blindly, and then something happens for the next step that you can walk on. That sometimes happens. Or sometimes it'll be where you're thinking a thought, and then in the highest and greatest good, something very numinous, very loving, and then you'll get an affirmation in that moment that that is along and congruent with the path you've chosen. But the answer would be is, thank you, that's great, and not hold on to it, you know? What do you think, Victor?
I just wanted to share one more thing. First, Michael, thank you for your stories. It helped remind me of some of the synchronicities that I'd experienced in the last year. And I think I'd shared with this group once before that there was a Gene Keys group that I had been following and being a part of. And we were going through a sequence in which the masculine and feminine, divine masculine and feminine I was approaching that. And I ended up going and spending a month with my birth father and birth mother just as that was happening. It was all by chance. And so it's exactly like if you stop looking for it, all of a sudden some of these amazing things just kind of like, oh my, like how could that happen? Like the chances, it's unreal.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. What do you think about that, Elizabeth? How do you feel about?
Well, I think you're bringing in a caution that's justified and reasonable. And I didn't think, I honestly wasn't thinking about a darker side to it, but when you bring that up, I can see the potential for that. So I appreciate the comment. I just know that when those things happen and I'm not seeing a dark side, I just have to say it kind of catches me, and I feel I experience the mystery and the delight that I feel this touch of something. So obviously I'm not out looking for the dark stuff at all. Yeah. But when they happen, it kind of takes my breath away. And I find it, just like you were saying, Victor, how did this happen? How did the timing work to this in this way? And I guess it when that happens, I go, wow, there's intentionality on the part of the creator to guide in different ways. And I want to avoid the dark part, certainly if possible, but I do appreciate the delight of something that happens like that. Like the woman sitting next to you, Michael. I mean, it's just, didn't it just kind of, what feeling did you have when you turn around and you realize and you see that ring? How would you describe that feeling that you had?
Intense joy. It was and yet I wasn't surprised. It wasn't like I was surprised. It was like, oh, it was OMG. That's really what it was. Like
Right.
squared. Yeah. Yeah.
Here
Totally.
you are again.
Here I am again, and when I thought it couldn't be, the other part of me, I literally only saw her out of the corner of my eye and wasn't even thinking she could be there, but I knew it was her before I really saw the ring.
Wow.
I knew it was her. Yeah.
I have no doubt. We all have stories like that. Yours is really stark and beautiful, Michael. So thank you for sharing. But it is such an interconnected, miraculous world.
Universe.
Yeah.
Cosmos. Well, we're all one cells in one body, so it
Totally.
should be the way it is.
I mean, I look at the way I found this group. From the way I found this group, to me was synchronistic. I mean, it didn't make sense that I could find this group, but then I found this group and I see the connection, and I go like, okay, this is another growth piece for me. And isn't that amazing that this happened that way? So yeah.
Well, in the same way I found this group through Doug, and that I put it out to the universe, that I was looking for somebody who's both a psychologist and with a very deep spiritual practice. And then I saw him on Batgap, and I said, "That's him."
That's how I found him too.
Yeah.
You might
and then he connects me with.
You might recognize if you go back to that first interview. Well, actually, all the interviews that I've done on Batgap, we're sitting in that chair right there where Troy is.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, Troy lent me Troy and Gwen, and that's where I sat right there.
Oh my golly!
Yeah.
Because you didn't have the setup at home, or you wanted the quiet.
I wanted the quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 kids, cats.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah.
Can I add a little something here?
Oh, please. Yes, Peter.
Time. Hi. Hey, it's interesting. I really enjoyed Michael's talk, especially the beginning, how you open your heart up, and that becomes a catalyst for positive synchronicity. That which is the magic of life. Mm-hmm. And I always tell myself, and I'll tell friends, if you're getting stuck in a rut in life and being alone, join the world, and the world joins you. It's a synchronicity. Join the world and the world joins you. A lot of people that get conspiratorial, and I have that in my life. I got to watch out in my own mind, and I live in an alternative community. When you get conspiratorial, you're rejecting the world in some ways, and you'll end up with a spiral of negative synchronicities. But one thing which I thought was interesting is that maybe this is a synchronicity, is the New York Times Magazine has a major story on loneliness. And I'll just read a paragraph from it. They say last year, the U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, issued a 71-page advisory warning of an American epidemic of loneliness and isolation, with all the danger that classification implies. Murthy has estimated the lack of social connection currently affects more Americans than say diabetes or obesity, together with a concurrent decision by the World Health Organization to make loneliness a global public health concern. Loneliness is a lack of synchronicity and a lack of the heart being opened up. And it seems that we're facing that as a society.
Yeah, thank you. Several counselors and spiritual teachers that I've talked to and or have heard all point loneliness as being maybe the fundamental pathos that humans might have at the very root of all mental illness. There's some level of disconnection and alienation.
Yeah.
Which is our experience, phenomenological experience of the veil of forgetting, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah. But I would say that synchronicities are there to awaken us up, remind us to remember, which means to member connect. We're all members, to reconnect the fact that there is nothing else but relationship and interconnection. So synchronicities ultimately do have that capacity to waken us up.
Oh no, it's fine. That particular meeting today was so good, and I have lately been running into a lot of them. Um, I decided, the funny thing about, doing driving like this and doing work is that I'm listening to radio, I'm listening to podcasts and so on and so forth. And I often find myself like getting caught up into the whole politics of everything and back and forth. And I'm passionate about it and all of that. So I like made a decision that for the first 2 to 3 hours, or at least two, that I just am going to be immersed in either just higher things, just giving that room for higher self to breathe. Uh, I'll do some meditation in the morning before I get out and work, but then to jump to into X or Twitter and see all the stuff going back and forth. I just was like, okay, I'm just getting too much into the crazy first. So I've been putting more time and spend some time with the Lord. And so the coolest thing, I'll tell you one last week, I pick up a guy, a young man, and I usually have some jazz playing or something like that. And so I had some music. He had a phone call came in, so I turned the music. I just put it on my headphones. But then I was like, okay, well, I don't need to do music. I'll go back to listening to my scripture online. I was like in the 10th chapter of Luke or something. So I was playing it on my phone in my headphones. And so he said, sir, could you, I see you're playing the Bible. Can you just play that out loud? And I said, sure, man, come on, let's go, baby. Let's go. And it was another long drive, probably about 45 minutes. And we listened to the book of the 10th chapter of Luke, and we talked about it and just shared. And it was it was so beautiful to me for a young man. It really reminded me of it at his age, that if he saw the Bible revolve, like going through my phone, and saw that I was listening to it. And so he was like, let's listen together. And he's pulling out things that he saw. I pulled out things that I saw in it. And we just had a beautiful time. And I mean, I cherish those type of moments that we have that. So that was really a special moment. And it's all of those type of moments that I just feel like from eternity's side, higher self is winking at me. Or, I used to say that I think dreams, if you're ever like a kid in the kids' room when the adults are talking, and you try to listen to what the adults say, and then to try to prove that you're a smart kid to all the other kids, you're repeating what the adults say. To me, that's what I think is happening to the lower self when it's tapping into the higher self and into synchronicity. It's like we hear those higher levels of of awesomeness, of God talk, of all of that, and then we try to bring it back into this world. And I think we halfway get it, and halfway we're just still back to baby talk. As best that we can get. But I just love when these synchronicities happen, because they're just like winks from the other side, winks from our higher self, just saying, yeah, keep on. You got the clues. You may not even have all the puzzles fitting together, but you got pieces to the puzzle. Keep on playing with the puzzle. And yeah.
Oh, man. It reminds me of how the one infinite creator is experiencing itself, and the cutting edge, the frontier of that experiencing is in third density space-time, just right here. And if wholeness or unity is always and everywhere true, there's a special kind of flavor, or you might say satisfaction, or telos, like aim. And that is when wholeness becomes manifested. And so I think that synchronicities, maybe at the best way one way to understand synchronicities, are times when we are able to see wholeness somehow being manifested. It's drawing our attention to the wholeness of that moment, for something new to manifest, to beget. There is no like creating. It's always just begetting, you know? And so I'm hearing you, Fred, talk about your conversation this morning over with this young man in the book of Luke, where together you're creating something new, and there was a wholeness, event of wholeness happened. And the way that feels is joy, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like this burst of joy. The one of the best definitions that I used to call it, and I've called it for years, I call it a glimpse of glory. It's a glimpse of glory, and that concept of glory is the whole big picture. But there is absolutely no way that I could even understand or obtain or just completely embody the entire big picture in third density. Is just, I would explode. So I can only get glimpses. I can get pieces to the puzzle, and it's like that. This is the joy of it. It's like, it's okay. Just gather the pieces, enjoy the pieces, let that joy burst out like a sunburst. And just know that no, there's no way you can hold it all together, but you get pieces and just enjoy those pieces, recognize those pieces. I think of the whole that Emmaus Road story. Did not our hearts burn within us while we were along the way? So it's like, this thing is happening all the time. And if there's anything, as my prayer is that, as a kid, I was told that I was accident prone. And so I accepted that. Well, I got hit by a car twice, once on the freeway, once on the street. I got bitten in the head by a dog. I fell off a house. I broke my leg. I broke my clavicle bone. I broke my finger. So yeah, they had a good reason to say, Fred, you're accident prone. But what it really was like, I was the kid. My head was always in the clouds. I was always in my head and just like thinking of other things and just not paying attention to things around me. Well, in that same sense, if we can get incident prone and not accident, where we have these incidents, these moments of glory, these glimpses of glory. And I think that comes through, just developing that habit of mindfulness and awareness and prayer and meditation. And it gets us to the point where we have these moments and we're more prone to have those moments because we're looking for them, we're open to them, and then they're happening all the freaking time.
Yes, they are. We pray for the eyes to see it. Yeah, and the heart to facilitate it and open. Thank you for sharing that. Whenever I'm with you, Fred, I feel a sense of wholeness, just your enthusiasm. Eduardo, and you were here last week. Martha, it's great to see you present, and I'd love, you can also participate. Neil, I can't remember if you were here last week or not. DeMarcus, welcome this week. We're talking about synchronicities and a little bit about what maybe the raw material speaks about synchronicities, but we're just sharing some of the synchronicities that have happened in our life. They don't have to be huge, because every moment is sacred and magical, and a synchronicity when we're able to see them. But sometimes the synchronicities just kind of shout to us. I'm going to share maybe one a little bit later on, but I was curious if DeMarcus, you always have some great stories. At least I think they're wonderful stories to share. Can you think of a synchronicity that might be of interest?
Yeah, so I would say, I guess one that currently I'm working through. Anytime I find myself in pretty intense catalyst, when I find myself, in sort of a bind in life, there always seems to be, I would say, the archetypical mind and the tarot always seem to pop up. I always seem to find myself going in depth or studying that once again, even if I'm not, intending to or trying to always feel like the universe just somehow always guides me to that whenever I'm in these periods of intense catalyst. And recently I feel like it's really the logos that's kind of like, here, it's time, take this, it's time to kind of study the backdrop, it's time to kind of study the guidebook. And since you are in the bind, since you can't figure out this catalyst, why don't you look to the foundation of the roots of the experiences? And so this is probably about the third time this has happened within the past year and a half. At this point, I've just accepted that it's most likely for sure the logos guiding me to this and pushing me or asking me to actually look deep into this and as a tool to overcome my catalyst. And that's happened recently. I would say a few weeks ago, I found myself wasn't even intentional, just sliding once again back into the tarot and actually coming across it's a modern day mystery school that actually studies the tarot and uses it for personal development and everything. So I've actually joined that, and I'm excited to dive deep into that.
Are you able to share the name of that group? It's okay if you can't.
Yes, it's called Builders of the Addendum.
Okay.
And it's been around since the 1920s. It's a pretty well-known modern mystery school. A lot of people, I did a lot of reviews and research on it, and a lot of people definitely speak highly of its curriculum. You have a lot of Masons who have spoken highly of it on how it fulfills their esoteric, cravings for knowledge that Masonry didn't achieve. And you have people, that wouldn't normally look at the tarot and then use it for their own personal development. So I feel like this is definitely a synchronicity, and for me to take the next step.
Would you mind keeping us updated about some of your progress and some of your learning about the different aspects of the tarot?
Absolutely.
Time. Yeah, maybe we can ask you to give a presentation when you might be ready, because that would be pretty cool to get a different perspective.
Yeah, and I'm also absolutely, for sure. I'm also looking forward to kind of seeing a different take on the archetypal mind as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. Wonderful. Martha or Eduardo or Neil, Rudy, do you guys have any synchronicities you might like to share? Moments of awe and wonder?
I can do one.
Sure.
I think a consistent one throughout my life and probably most of ours is the hawk synchronicity, and trying to find that in moments of inspiration or turning points of this is the Confederation or Ra, kind of giving you the tilt of the right path. And then I've kind of just been playing with that idea of the animals and the ancient Egyptians using the animals. So like the other day, had a giant praying mantis land on the gutter right next to me. And that was just something where I had to look it up and see what it meant. So that sparked that joy as well. So trying to play off that feeling. And I think going off Michael's presentation with Suzanne Giesman, she was very inspiring on my path as well, and getting those synchronicities. And she's just all about joy every day and playing that game. So very grateful for her path, and you, Michael, for rejoining her with me. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I'll share a quick synchronicity. There's been several big, huge ones in my life. But one that was pivotal more recently in my life, when I say more recently, this is going back 2018. And I was working at University of Dallas, which is a private Catholic school here in Dallas, and it's really conservative place. And I was the director of counseling there, the department, and it was a difficult place for me to be, although I felt called to be there. But it was difficult because the overall mindset of that place, and I think it's either the same now or even more so, is pretty rigid and traditional and reactionary in thinking. So I would have a lot of dealings with people who had high degrees of anxiety and depression that you may not even see so much in the general public because they were connected with kind of a religiosity that you see in extremely conservative groups. And one of the clients that I had given her a blog piece or two over because I had written the blog, and the blog has more esoteric material, as you guys know. And she was somebody that I thought would benefit from something that I had written. She seemed to be more open-minded and was speaking this way inside of the session. And so I linked her to my blog, and then there were other things too that I was doing at the University of Dallas. For example, I founded a group for LGBTQ groups that really didn't make me popular with administration. But it's whenever I would see students who have major issues, I would just go found a community or a group because people can help themselves so much better. We need solidarity, you know? So I founded several groups, none of which were really liked by the administration. But when I was fired, it was very painful for me. And I also knew that I needed to do this right. I felt a little bit like there's a lot of karma here, and I can be very angry or I can embrace it and forgive and ask for forgiveness, you know? So that's the route I took, but it was also very painful. And so I remember driving home from the University of Dallas to my home, which is about a 25-minute drive. I didn't ask for signs, but I certainly got them. And the signs that I got just still stick with me. And it was what you were saying, Neil, about the hawks. So first off, hawks are very important for me, and I do link them with the Confederation and the raw material. And secondly, there's a special sacred number that I have. It's very sacred to me. And it's one that emerged back in 2015 and then has been with me ever since. At some point, maybe I'll share that. But anyways, when I was driving home, I wasn't looking for anything, but just in the span of about 5 minutes, I saw hawks, and this is me on the highway, but I saw hawks crisscrossing over my car. It wasn't like they were 10 feet that way or 10 feet that way. They were crisscrossing right over my car all the way up. I mean, I wasn't able to go full speed because there was traffic, but it was. Now, am I delusional here and finding patterns that don't exist? Maybe, but it was very comforting to me at that moment. And that probably happened for 15 of that 20 to 25 minutes driving home is I would have different experiences of hawks driving right over. So it might have been 5 or 6 occasions, which had never happened to me before like that. And the second thing is that within a span of 3 minutes, I saw 4 cars, and the number that I find sacred has 3 numbers in it. So it's not like just 2, you know, it's 3 numbers, separate numbers. And I saw 4 cars that had this number, and they would either be right in front of me, and then that comes off, and then someone comes up right in front of me again, and then that has that. 4 of them in 3 minutes. And the message that I overwhelmingly understood was, this is my cup to drink. The bitter cup to drink of being fired, the shame there, sadness for things left unsaid or undone. But this is my initiation in a kind of betrayal. I think I forgot to tell you that the woman, my client whom I had seen, actually turned in my blog because she needed a scapegoat for something. So she turned in my blog to the president, and then the next day, I was told I was the cult leader of Ra and satanic and all these kinds of things. So, and people were like looking at pictures of me saying, "See, he has reptilian eyes," and just it was crazy. So, I'm not sticking out my tongue because I'm part of a reptile. Just kidding. Had to joke about that. Anyways, the whole way home, I just felt held, even though it was my cup to drink and the cup was bitter, but that I was not alone. I was accompanied, and that it was actually a magical initiation for me. Indeed, it was, because it ushered me into the next phase of my life where I opened up my private practice. And, Martha, you and I, and Eduardo, wow, 3 of the 4 people, I think, we founded the Building Forth group together. So that happened there too. So I give thanks for the betrayals and the trials and the chalices that we have to drink. But the signs were so overwhelming that the only thing that would have been more overwhelming is had a hawk maybe come into my car. Other than that, it was incredible. Thanks for listening. So, Rudy, I bet you have some pretty cool things to share. Do you have a synchronicity you might want to share with us?
Yes. And I think the external significance of it is extremely minimal to anybody but me, but it still counts. So I was doing some meditation work and asking for the proper next step or proper next guidance on like a pretty not dire but complex and tedious and multifaceted situation. And I was like, what the fuck? Just give me the next thing that I should focus on, learn, or do. And I saw in what came to me in the image was, okay, in 1993 there was a cartoon. There was a cartoon, like, there was this period of the early 90s where kids programming was actually like subversive liberal content. Like, and Nicktoons are a big example of that. So if you watch closely, like Rugrats, Rocko's Modern Life, just shows that came out between like 92 and 96, they had very strong resonant undertones of creating a strong individual life that is not conforming and being good to yourself and other people and embracing uniqueness. And they were all very like queer coded, very like pro immigrant, but it was so quiet because it was 1993. There was not much you could say, especially if you wanted to be able to talk to children every day. So it was all very subtle. And so Nickelodeon had a bunch and Warner Brothers had a bunch. If you ever watch like animated Batman or Animaniacs, like it's crazy. And they quote Nietzsche and Kafka and like all kinds of crazy shit and like talk about how backwards like racist judicial court decisions are. It's just like it's insane. Like I look back at it and it's insane that they gave that to children. I'm very glad. But there were a few shows that I wasn't allowed to watch because of the religious undertones in my house, undertones and overtones in my house. Very traditional Baptist house. And one of the shows I couldn't watch was the show called Gargoyles because they just, I don't know, looked evil or looked like bats or something. I don't know. My parents were scared of it, so I couldn't watch it. And as I was looking for guidance on this situation, I just like saw a still from that in my head, and I'd never watched the show because it was contraband, and this is the time before the internet. So if your parents said no, you really couldn't watch the shit. So like, and I'd never gone back as an adult to go back. So I'd never seen the show, didn't have any context for the show, nothing. So I went back and I'm like, this was last week. I'm like, why am I digging up a show from 1993, a 30-year-old animated cartoon? What am I doing? And I'm like, just roll with it. So I put it on and it's kind of crazy. The show has, I can't stress enough. 93, 94. The show has a black heroine. The show is basically kind of pins Elon Musk to the T. It's about, like, obviously the gargoyles are allegories for gay people, and and some of the very interesting ways to not throw the baby out with the bathwater when dealing with religious people. And I'm like, how was this for children? And the gargoyles come from a time where they were betrayed in Scotland in the Middle Ages, and then now they come to a New York that basically treats them like trans people or gay people, and so they have to be very careful with who they let in. But the underlying point of the show is about finding grace in extremely adverse conditions, and there were tons of Black people who did the voices in the show, which was just like insane. And the underlying themes over and over and over and over and over and over again were about a particular type of grace under pressure, about a particular type of forgiveness in unthinkable conditions, but delivered as this, like, mythical, wildly intense and prophetic, noir for children. So it was great to sit with it for a lot of time in the weekend and have my questions answered by a 30 fucking year old cartoon. It was great.
Oh, amen for the courageous producers of that show, huh?
Right?
Cool. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch He-Man because of Orko. My mom's like, oh, those and the Smurfs. I couldn't watch the Smurfs because they're just little witches trying to. It's all Satanism trying to get little kids to go to hell.
I have a friend who couldn't watch the Smurfs either.
Yeah.
I'm sorry those were denied you. I hope you go back and pick them up as an adult.
I haven't had a need yet. I feel like I would get so hooked. The addictive personality. Eduardo, how are you doing, buddy? Do you have any interesting synchronicities you want to share with us?
I can't think of anything in particular. Like I've mentioned to you, like privately about how I've been struggling with things and how everything seems out of sync lately, I guess. But I guess to mention something, maybe school. Going back to school does kind of allow me to realize and resync with wanting to be a counselor and how I've called that a vocation my whole life, and being able to be back in the classroom. I don't know. It feels like it sets my head straight, I guess. But other than that, not too much. I guess seeing Martha here too. I didn't want to say just Martha because I've known Neil and DeMarcus for a while here too and whatnot. But like seeing Martha here today, I was just like, oh look, it brought a lot of joy out of me. I've been praying for you, Martha. I'm so happy to see you. Glad you're here.
See, that's a synchronicity, isn't it? That you see Martha here today.
No, yeah, that was a perfect example too. Because my attendance has been bloody, but then today I pop in and she's here. I'm like, oh, look at that! What a coincidence, I guess.
Awesome, love it. Martha, do you have anything you'd like to share? You're on mute.
I had to unmute. You know how I am with technology. It takes me 15 minutes to do what everybody else can do in 5. It was good to hear Eduardo. I can't even say it tonight. It was good to hear him. But, I've had synchronicities throughout my life, even before I heard of Law 1. I think the older I get and the more I seek the truth, whatever the truth is, the more I see synchronicity. We used to call it serendipity, same thing. And, there's been times that I remember one time in particular that I was asking my divine creator for something that would just bring me some joy or beauty into the world, not for anything specific, and, something would show up. The birds, I'm not as much into the bird symbols as I am the roads, and I remember one time asking God for the beauty of one rose just to get through hell that I was going through. And I already made up my mind that at the end of the day, I was going to go to the grocery store and buy my own damn rose, so I could have the beauty of the rose. And the place I was working in, South Carolina, I walked into the backyard and they had these trees that had just bloomed into roses. I didn't even know there was such a thing as rose trees. And there was just hundreds of blooms. And I'm going, well, I don't have to go to Kroger, that's for sure. And all I asked for was one rose and got thousands of them. So just little things like that often happens. Excuse my voice. Got a little bit of laryngitis. But yeah, it comes up a lot. Even finding your card the day I was in the receptionist's office, I was seeking for somebody, but I didn't know who I was seeking for. And I found your card, sitting on the table. So,
at the Catholic Church?
Yeah. So, and if I'd read it, anybody else, it'd been different probably. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Speaking of roses, my mom, her mother, with whom she was very close and very spiritual, my grandmother lived with us for the last 6 months of her life. She died of bone cancer in 1983. And that was hard on my mom. It was sacred for us. I was only in third grade, but it was impactful for sure. Anyways, my grandmother wanted to be cremated and a rose garden planted. We had a lot of acreage near Fort Worth, Texas at that point. So created a rose garden, and she wanted to have white roses planted for her garden. And the reason why she wanted white, because of hope and the color of the Holy Spirit in her mind, the white color of the Holy Spirit. And so we planted the white roses, and they were great for a year, and then they died. And this coincided with my mother's depression. I remember her having a clinical depression. I didn't know what that was, but she had all the signs and symptoms of really, really bad depression. And bless her heart, she had two young boys to raise. So what was crazy, though, is she was also depressed because the roses had died. And so she felt that she had somehow lost contact with her mother and she let her down or whatnot. But the next year, I kid you not, this is this crazy synchronicity. The next year, one rose came back, and it was not white. It was a red rose, which is the sign of love. And and at least that's how my mother understood it, was the sign of love. Red rose. Between my mother and my grandmother, red rose was the sign of the love. And it coincided. It was actually the inaugural event that helped my mom's depression get relieved. At that point, she had had a depression for a year and a half, something like that. But the red rose, and it came out, it was beautiful, and my mom was completely shocked. So she went to the place where she bought the roses and said, "Is it possible that you gave me some red rose seeds or something?" And he looked up the order. No. Well, is it possible that a red rose can, like a rose bush can be white and then the next year be red? No, it's different genetics, So there's nothing to explain it other than this was this holy synchronicity. There was communication, and it also helped my mom really feel connected and allowed her to let go of the depression and feel connected and in love and hope with her mother. So wanted to share that special time in our life. Yeah. What do you guys think about spiritual gravity? In other words, when our focus or when our faith and our will are really honed, because Ra talks about strengthening the will and faith as adepts, and you strengthen your will and faith, it becomes a kind of gravity that pulls things into our purview. So I'm wondering, like Michael's story last night with your friend, the author. I'm trying to feel out how that will and faith in that time of your life allowed you to look and read some of her material, or I guess maybe it was a YouTube video, and then see her the very next day. Do you remember how strong your seeking was at that point? Would you share?
This was just out of the blue. I understand what you're saying about seeking, because when I first started noticing them, and then they started really coming in very strongly where I had to notice them, that was when I really asked to be opened, right? I mean, I did put out an intention. I wasn't asking for signs. I was just saying, it was a surrender, a yes. But no, I'm still trying to figure out the one that was a couple weeks ago. And I just finished her book a couple nights ago, and she has some psychic gifts. And the next time I see her, I'm going to push her a little bit and say, are you sure you don't have any inclination of what this was all about? Or is it just, a wink from God, which I think, as I think Fred described it as a wink from spirit, that's kind of what it feels like to me. I think the gravity is already there. There wasn't that I was actually seeking to be pulled into anything.
Well, pulling that thing into you.
Right.
Okay.
And not that I'm aware of. Not that I wish I could say, but I can see where other ones have happened that way. Mm-hmm. But I think, Doug, also what you were talking about in your first share was that it's also an opportunity for spirit to be playful. And there's just always, in the ones that I'm finding, there's a playfulness to it. And I've also heard and read from a number of people that spirit enjoys working with birds, and birds enjoy being also used by spirit because it's kind of like they're guiding them. And they enjoy it on both, from both perspectives. But it's the playfulness that I'm really appreciating now.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm going to invite everybody here to take up those words, playfulness, finding playfulness, because that's actually in a lot of psychology circles. We're rediscovering the joy of play as even a psychological intervention, a tool. Play is so important. Animals play all the time. And we adults feel like play is for children, but actually God is playing in and through and as all of us. So we might as well just sit back and enjoy playing and participate in the play, even things that can be a little bit difficult. If we can see it almost with the idea of play, it's to take it seriously and at the same time not so seriously. That's a little bit of a paradox, which is also a kind of play, isn't it? Greek tragedies, whatnot, but there's tension and building and release and all of that, and it can be fun. So I've been really, really touched by the idea of play recently. What about you guys? How does that make you feel as you're listening to play in your own lives too?
I know there's a concept in Hinduism called Leela, which means divine play. And it's pretty much the concept that creation isn't, just some objective existence, but it's the product or the outcome of the playful nature of the divine. Pretty much creation is the sole product of divinity playing with itself, playing hide and go seek with itself. And so Hinduism kind of teaches to use that in our own personal lives. You know, using Krishna as an example, he was very playful. He was a very joyous person, but also very powerful, very divine as well. So it's interesting I brought that up, and that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Awesome.
I have an idea. I'm been looking up the red ray and how to heal the red ray, and they talk about just creating that smile and happiness to be here and just being that playful joy. And I think that in itself can lead to a happier, just in the moment experience.
There's a lot to laugh at. I know in my own counseling with clients, I try to be a counselor that humor is just, there's all kinds of humor and play. Even the hard stuff can be seen with a little bit of levity and joy. I think oftentimes we feel like we have to be so serious, you know, that the stakes are so enormous. And on one hand, they are, but on the other hand, we make them more important than they really are. If we could truly open our hearts to the sacred moment, you know, the sacrament of the moment, the holiness of the moment, whole and playful, then I don't know if we can take things so seriously, even as we honor them immensely.
Of course, God, loving Father and Mother, thank you for this time together and for this time to recount our many synchronicities and the joy that they bring us. We ask that you continue to open our eyes and open our hearts so that we feel and experience the joy that is you, our one infinite creator. Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Amen. God bless everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.